Hello and welcome to Fan OCC episode 6, where I take an original creature concept by a concept artist or character designer and redesign it in my own unique style. And in today's video, we'll be looking at a creature from REDreev, a character designer / freelance illustrator from Dublin. And this concept is called Amorphous. And if you have a minute, please go to the description box below to check out his other links to his ArtStation and Instagram and see more of his artworks there. Also, if you can, please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel and become a supporting member of my art. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into ZBrush. So, starting off inside of ZBrush, I started with some basic primitive shapes for this creature. And I wanted to take it down this route rather than using a Z-sphered creature from ZBrush's inventory that comes with ZBrush, because it is quite a unique looking creature and the Z-sphere tools that they have just wouldn't have fit for this creature. It would have been a lot of manipulation. So I decided I'd go along with the primitives. So I'm using spheres and cylinders. I started to block out the concept provided. So the concept today is coming from a REDreev and the piece is called Amorphous, a monster from Nightmare. And you can go and check out his concept work as well on ArtStation or Instagram. And he's got some really cool looking designs and concept works ranging from various looking creatures to humans and robots. So I'd definitely go there and have a look at what he's got. So returning back to the sculpt, I've gone and I've manipulated the primitives into shapes first, and then once I've done with that, I started to dynamesh everything together, keeping it focused on major body parts. So I left the legs to separate subtools, and then I merged the body, all the body parts together to focus in on the body. This is a great technique to use because you get to focus on one particular area much better, and you can also change the legs. If the legs were too short or too long, you could change them without having to affect the whole model because it's all done in parts. This just makes it easier to get around the model and to see things from a different angle without having something in your way. The tool brushes I'm using, or the brushes I'm using right now, are the basic ones. So your dam standard, your clay buildup brush, some smooth, some move tool, move brush as well, the gizmo tool to move things as well. Dam standard, very much enjoy using dam standard to cut in some of those muscle tones on our creature. And then coming in with the clay buildup and the move brush and just making sure that I get this creature's silhouette looking like the concept. So some of you might look at the creature in the concept and think, oh, that's quite an easy thing to sculpt. You know, it's very basic shapes. It's not got much going on the creature either. But that's where you'd be a little bit wrong, because making a creature that is very basic look impressive is one of the very difficult tasks that you have when it comes to creature design and creature sculpting. Making sure that it looks correct and it looks like it belongs in this universe is very difficult. I'd say that the skinnier a creature is, the harder it is actually to sculpt. The bigger the creature is with muscles and fat, the more you can get away with when it comes to concepting, because you don't have to worry too much about the bone placement or the muscles, and you also get more freedom to exacerbate things, rather than if you're doing a skinny creature like this one, it can be very difficult to portray it as skinny as the concept is. So talking about creatures, this one actually reminded me a lot of the one from Attack the Block. And if you haven't seen that film already, it's an amazing film. It's got the same kind of alien creatures, but they're purely black and have teeth that glow blue. So that kind of reminded me of this creature as well. And then also the Alien films, they are a great source for what I would imagine he used for the concept. The way the sort of creature looks, it's very reminiscent of Alien as well. Specifically Alien 3, the dog looking creature, or the dog looking alien. Very cool creature design. I would actually rank that one high up on my list as one of my favorite alien designs. So returning to the sculpt, I've now added some digits or fingers to my creature, and I decided to rotate them so they weren't sitting flat, but they were sitting more of an angle, so they were straight as if the palms were straight. This is a good technique to use if you're going to create animals or creatures like this. You don't want to put the fingers straight as if he's standing. You want to put it so that it's straight along the palm, so that you can rig it properly and then animate it to be standing on its fingers, basically. You limit yourself if you have the fingers slightly bent on the ground, as is in the concept. So right now, I'm just going along using the clay buildup and the standard brush, adding in some muscle definition and using them in tandem to help build up those muscle structures of my creature. Another more recent example of a creature that looks like this would have been maybe the Stranger Things creature, the Demogorgon. That was also a really cool looking creature with the sort of flower head that opens up to show off of all these teeth, and especially in the later episodes or later seasons when they go to the sort of facility to find out what's going on, you see those little dog sort of Demogorgons. They're really cool. Kind of reminded me of that as well. So returning to the sculpt, I'm now using the move brush just to reposition some areas, make it look more like the concept. The way I work is very quick and fast, so sometimes I'll sort of go off on a tangent and forget about what I was supposed to be designing, and then I'll have to go back in and use the move brush to fix those areas. Right now you can see focusing on the head a little bit, around the jaw area, adding some of that shape in the face as well. No eyes on this character, which is really cool. I quite like the idea of having no eyes on creatures. It gives it that bit more of a creepy look to them, and it worked really well with the Alien films as well. So yeah, very cool not having eyes. So it's at this point that I'm really happy with the way things are looking with my creature, and it's now time to start introducing the extra parts, so the claws and the teeth. In a minute you'll see how I do that. I simply use a cylinder and I pinch one end and I smooth it out until it becomes like a pyramid, or a pyramid shape, and then I'll just arch the ends a bit so that it's got a bit of curve to it. That makes it look more like a claw. And then what I'll do is I'll use the trim dynamic brush and I'll just sharpen those edges so that it's got more of a triangular or diamond shape to it, diamond shape cut. So you can see there, just doing what I said, and then I'll ZRemesh it, and then I'll start placing it into position where the claws are and where the back claws are as well. And once that's done, it's all about repeating the process with the teeth. So once I've done that, I just create another cylinder and then I sort of shrink it down a bit and make them slightly smaller than the claws. And then what I'll do is I'll just put that into the mouth area where the jaws are, and I'll just copy and paste and duplicate that model, and just until I'm finished with all the placement of the teeth in the mouth on one side, and then I can just mirror over to the other side. It's a very quick way to make some teeth for your character. And finally, once that's all done and I'm happy, I'm 95% happy with how the model looks, I will take it, ZRemesh it, project all the detail back onto the ZRemesh model, and then start the actual sculpting detail on the skin. So here you can see I have started that process. I'm using a standard brush. I'm going around trying to find some of that loose skin, the loose skin that I'm normally going on about in my tutorials, how it helps give the character more character, and having loose skin. It also gives a bit of realism because it's pulling down, gravity is pulling down the skin and it's making it look more realistic. So in the concept, you can see that there's quite a lot of that loose skin and wrinkles going on, which is really, really helpful when it comes to the sculpting the detail stage. So this stage of the sculpting is normally the fun part, where you get to add more detail to your character and you don't have to worry about having to dynamesh anything because you have a fixed model that you are happy with. I would not go anywhere near this stage without being at least 95% happy with how the dynamesh version is, because I tend to work in that way where I use dynamesh to sculpt and sketch a creature, and then when it gets to this stage I am almost 100% happy with how my creature is going to look. So as you can see here, just using the damn standard, very basic tools. I don't like using a lot of different brushes that are very complex. I like to use very standard brushes so that even people who are trying to follow along or are interested in ZBrush, just note that these brushes that I'm using are pretty standard. The only time I'll use a more complex brush will be when it comes to the fine details, which is coming up in a minute, and you'll see how I use some alpha maps like this one to add some tertiary details to it, so some skin wrinkles and finer wrinkles along the surface of the body, just so it's not flat. I'm trying not to have a flat model. I want some sort of texture on my character when I take it into Keyshot and put the lights on it. I want that light to sort of bounce off the character, and having it flat will just make it really boring to look at as well. So just bear that in mind. These alphas just help to sell your creature. Now, obviously, you wouldn't do this if you were doing a film character or game character. This is more for the concept side. You want to put down your ideas as fast as possible, and alphas really help with that. You can use alphas in film and game. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but you'd be a bit more precise. Right now, I'm just trying to get a really nice concept made and then get it created inside of Photoshop and Keyshot and finished off later to make it look really cool for, say, a art director or as a concept piece for my portfolio. And talking about texture, we are now into the stage where I start to add color. So just using the basic color sets and using the skin shader that comes with ZBrush, I just start to put some color onto the character. This is just to help sell it later. You don't want to go into Keyshot with a gray box model and then try to add color on. You want to be able to have color that's already there, so it's got something to work with, and it just makes things really quick and easy, really. So you see there, I'm using the blue now to add into the mouth. Using the standard brush with nothing but RGB set to it. That's the kind of go-to brush that I go for these days. There are some other brushes that I can use, but normally it's just a standard brush. And then I'll use some masking tools inside of ZBrush to mask out areas and then paint within those recesses to give it a bit more life. And this method can be used on other things like crocodiles or dragons to get into those recesses and add some dust or some dirt or some harsh tones or lighter tones in order to sell that scale that you're trying to work with. It's a very good technique to use in general. Play around with those masking tools and see what you come up with. Moving on, going into transpose now, using transpose to pose our character, and this is a very arduous task and it takes forever to do. So be patient, don't rush this part because it can mess up your entire concept if you do it too fast and you don't pay attention to what you're doing. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm just masking out areas, and then moving those parts of the model to pose our creature. It's a very old school way of doing it. You can make rigs as well outside of ZBrush and import them in, or inside of ZBrush and then use it that way, but I find this is the quickest way to create it. It's probably one of the dirtiest way to do it, but it's the quickest way to pose a character, to get it done and move on as fast as possible. Now, there was some parts that I cut out of the film or the footage where I just went in and I did some tweaks here and there, and that's only because I stepped away from the model for a few hours and I went back and I saw it wasn't looking quite right, so I went back and I transposed again and changed the position of the creature. But that's essentially it for the ZBrush stage. So the next stage will be inside a Keyshot where I'll start to render the character, and then into this Photoshop where we'll do the compositing. So I'll see you in a minute inside a Keyshot. Hey guys, if you're interested in learning how to sculpt and composite characters, then visit my online stores for in-depth tutorials, models, brushes, and more. Just follow the links in the description box below. Also, if you enjoy this content, then please like, share, and subscribe for more videos in the future. Now, let's get back to the video. So this is going to be a very brief run through of how I use Keyshot to render my images to take into Photoshop and composite them afterwards. First thing I do is I import the character into Keyshot using the bridge that comes with ZBrush and Keyshot. And then I go in and I start to manipulate the textures of the character, adding some translucency to the creature, and then some ground textures for the ground. And then I'll add an environment background, and then after that add a spotlight in just to highlight some of the model a little bit more on the front with a light. And then from there it's all about just tweaking the render until I'm happy with how it looks. So you can see here I'm just tweaking the image till I'm happy with how it looks. So I'm not going for super realistic, I'm not going for exact material ID or materials. I'm just trying to get a really cool looking render so that I can take it into Photoshop and manipulate it further. If you want, you can check out the tutorial that I have created using Keyshot and Photoshop, and you can see how I go about using Keyshot and exactly what I do inside a Keyshot to get the renders that I want. So right now I'm just rendering out those key render images that I need to take into Photoshop, and then it's all about having fun inside of Photoshop, compositing this character or creature with a final look. So join me inside of Photoshop where I'll start to composite these renders to get the final look of this creature. So finally inside of Photoshop where I've put all the images and renders in the right hand side of my layers, and I'm going around and I'm starting to use those renders to manipulate the image that I couldn't do inside of Keyshot because of the limitations that I have within Keyshot. Keyshot's normally just a rendering engine, so it just renders your images. There always is going to be a need to take those images into Photoshop and start to composite them. And that's exactly what I'm doing right here. I'm adding some more specular highlights, more reflective highlights. I'm taking highlights out of the ground. I'm making the key focus the character, which is always the point of these concepts, is to make the character the key focus of your image. And so I'm making the character lighter, adding some of that orange into the belly that I couldn't do before. And so I'm just, exaggerating some key areas of my character. And then all it is taking out the background, adding in the background. So I wanted to keep it kind of mellow, kind of boring, because I'm trying to focus on the character, not on the background. So it's going to be a few cloud brushes I have to make some of that mist in the background. And then I darken the feet a little bit because they're closer to the ground. So it makes sense to make the feet a little darker there as well. And then I'm just going around manipulating the background a bit more, make it a little lighter in the background as well, so it blends in better, using the cloud brush. And then eventually I'll start to add some textures from online. So you can go online and you can find some tileable textures. It doesn't matter what it is, depending on what creature or character is, and you can just plaster that all over your character and use it as a benefit to add more detail to your creature. So those fine wrinkles we couldn't get inside of ZBrush, we can now use that inside of Photoshop and just make it look like it belongs on the character. It just enhances the character as well. There's a lot of work that goes into the Photoshop side as well as the ZBrush side. So you can see here I just found a dirt texture from online, duplicated it, and now that's my ground. And my ground looks 10 times more interesting now than it did before because of that texture. So that's just a very quick and easy way to add more interest to your image. Also making sure to blend in the background and the foreground and just make it look like it sits nicely within this image. Key focus is the character though, always the character. Next thing I did was to get in there with a very small brush and add some saliva that's dripping off the mouth. I found that this just gave a little bit more character as well, like it was alive and breathing. So you can see that the saliva is dripping from its mouth. It wasn't in the original concept, but I thought it would be a little interesting take, personal take on the creature. And speaking of the original concept, I'd again like to thank REDreev for letting me use his concept in this video. And if you can, please go and share, like or support him as an artist by going and following his Instagram. I'm sure he'd very much appreciate it. I'll leave the links in the description box below so you can go and check those out in your own time. So we're coming up to the end nearly of this concept journey with this creature, and the only thing now left to do is to add the adjustment layers, which just give a bit of a punch to the character, a bit of kick to the overall image, and then it's all about adding a little bit more detail here and there, and finding that sweet spot for the look we're going for. Apart from that, that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you can, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. All your subscriptions mean a lot to me, and I'm still trying to hit that 100,000K goal that I set myself. And also want to thank the Patreons as well for all their support on my page. And if you want, you can go and check that out as well, become a member, where you can enjoy my artwork even further. And I'll leave a link in the description box below for that. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Stay tuned for the next episode next month, and take care.